C3 community. Hello, everybody on social media. We are streaming live on LinkedIn, YouTube, and Twitter right now. I'm Karen Huller. I am one of your co-hosts here for the Answer the Call to Conscious Leadership event that we have monthly through the C3 community. C3 stands for Corporate Consciousness Co-op. We're a community of people on LinkedIn who are committed to co-creating a more conscious corporate landscape. And we have recognized that the last couple of years have been a very critical pivot point for these initiatives. And we're trying to embrace it and push the wave of momentum forward as much as we can by providing a platform for leaders who have had success doing this already to share their success secrets. So they're not secrets anymore. So we can all employ these really brilliant tactics and strategies again, to move the needle even further, so that it's not a, as my friend said, a pendulum, to make sure that it keeps going in that direction as far as we can push it. So joining me today are my co-host, Lawrence Henderson, as well as our panelists today on women in leadership and women in the corporate workplace as part of an overarching umbrella of DEI. And she is Asiya Abdul Alim. She is author, organizational change agent, promoting diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging in the workplace. So welcome, Lawrence. Welcome, Asiya.
Hi, everybody.
Hey, Asiya.
Hey.
Lovely to see you. It's been a minute.
It has been a minute. I know.
Yeah. What have you been doing in the world these days?
I was fortunate to become an author this year. I wrote a chapter in a book. It's coming out. It's doing its pre-launch right now. It's called She's the Boss, and I got to work with some other really talented ladies on this. And it just talks about our journey of how we've overcome things, in our personal lives to get to where we are today. So that's basically what I've been working on.
Well, I'm excited to be back live with the C3 community and LinkedIn Live. And so thank you, Karen, for always being ready and willing to co-create and all those other good things. So y'all, as we go through today, as you can see, we've got an amazing topic around, again, women in leadership and work in the workplace and DEI. So as you have questions live, please throw your questions out there to us so we can answer them real time. But I want to tee up Karen and Asiya. Just again, when you think about just representation, women in leadership, what does that mean to you?
To me, it means having a seat at the table, making our presence known, and being able to share our ideas. That it's hard, and we're always pushing that glass ceiling, to just get rid of it and shatter it. So I think that when you see women in leadership, it just shows that slowly but surely that ceiling is cracking. It's beginning to shatter. So I think that when I hear that, it just gives me hope. It gives me it keeps me optimistic, and it lets me know that I can do whatever I want to do, and no matter how old I am.
I was reading a tweet today, and it really resonated with me, just about how, it was somebody who was combating the stigma of wokeness, with one of their friends, and just kind of explaining that, ultimately it's about strong leaders making sure that the people that they're leading are valued as people, and that everyone's lived experiences are validated, and that that leaders do as much as they can to level the playing field, or adjust the playing field accordingly, so that everybody has an equal opportunity to succeed and thrive and contribute. And in terms of women specifically, it's, for me, I'd love to see more women, instead of playing along with the old patriarchal, authoritarian corporate structures, to invent their own.
Mm-hmm.
That creates a place for the female approach, the feminine approach to leadership, which is more empathetic and compassionate, while still keeping intact accountability systems, the way a mom would for their kids.
Yeah, true. I agree.
And I think that's interesting. And thank you both for sharing that point of view. I would even also like to offer the opportunity for women to not to have to sign themselves up for being the bearers of empathy or being the ones that are good at it. And I think about one of my coach buddies who I do another podcast with, and shout out to Alora, who, you know, having the computer information system background, like her default isn't empathy. Her default is results. It is getting things done. And as a also, she's a certified strengths coach. She's like, empathy is number 34. On 34, like I get to it, but I need my stuff first. And I think that's a part of when you think about just women in leadership and DEI. I think the assigning of roles, if you will, to women, like it's like, hey, you should be kinder or softer, or like, what does that even mean? When we got to get the job done, and why does that lay at women's feet in leadership? And for both of you, how has that stunted or delayed rising in organizations because of that? And I'll throw this word out there, that bias, that's what you'll lead with.
For me, you know, I feel like one, yes, I'm a woman, and second, I'm a Black woman. I mean, well, first, I'm a Black woman, you know, and I am a very assertive person. I am a person who also wants results, and I like to think that, you know, I'm policy based. I want to know what we're doing, and if we're not doing it in a way that's effective, I want to change that. And I feel like a lot of people see that as, oh, the stereotypical angry Black woman. And I'm like, that's not who I am at all. I'm just a woman who is passionate about what I do. And sometimes that may come off as being too serious, but it's just that, you know, being results driven and being that person who may not always show empathy and more so shows transparency, that may not always look like the way you want it to look. And I feel like that for me, it has stunted my growth, because a lot of people, especially in corporate environment, can't accept that. They don't want anyone who's going to, you know, rattle the cage.
I've been in the middle of creating a series for the Delaware State Bar Association Journal. I just submitted Article 2, where I'm focused on women, their women's leadership initiative under that umbrella, and really speaking to women and advocating, teaching them to advocate for themselves, really, and understanding that there's studies that show that when women exhibit masculine leadership qualities like assertiveness, it backfires. It's you know, it's not seen as a success factor. It's inhibited them. It's held them back.
Mm-hmm.
In my own personal professional experience, I started out in radio, which was male dominated, and I don't know if it was my age or whatever, but I definitely felt like there was a tough road to climb to prove myself there. And ultimately, I was not that interested in traveling that road. And when I got into recruiting, I started out at a boutique firm with 4 women. So we were all women. And it was a different experience than I thought it would be. There was not drama. Drama was not tolerated. We worked collaboratively. It was really great. Then I moved on to a firm that was more male dominated, an IT consulting firm, and worked mostly with male candidates in that field. For me, I don't know if I could attribute the things that inhibited me to my age, my junior ranking. You know, after a while, I did feel like I had my firm footing. I had more expertise. I could speak more authoritatively. And my firm, I was lucky. I didn't really have a lot of limits in terms of my gender at that firm. I probably had candidates that didn't want to give me the time of day because they didn't feel like I understood them, their job, you know. But I did experience that gender wage gap. I can't say it was gender. Again, I started out when I moved to that boutique consulting firm, I was vastly underpaid because it was boutique. It was one woman running the executive director running the office, and she was still growing. She was in growth mode. And I accepted a much lower salary to change careers. And I look back at that and think I really probably sold myself short. And then when I moved to the other firm, it was in a time when your previous salary absolutely was a determining factor of your future salary, which is becoming a lot more recognized as unfair, as something that sustains the gender wage gap and any wage gaps. So thankfully, that firm also put me through negotiation coaching so that I could negotiate with my candidates and our clients, the employers, and that training that they provided to me, I used directly on them to increase my salary by 50% and equal the playing field for myself. And that's what I teach people now. Like you advocate for yourself. It's absolutely a two-pronged approach. We need corporations to take it upon themselves to pay more fairly. And it would only behoove people who are underpaid to learn how to advocate for themselves, but it should not be a burden on the people who have been experiencing the conditions that have kept them inhibited in their growth, in their income. But it's a should, and it's not the reality. The reality is, if we look at historically how things have changed and how corporate things have changed, it's been about companies recognizing that over time, they need to compete for talent. They need to change things or they're going to lose. They're going to lose to competition. They're going to lose, their potentially customers and revenue if they don't start to adjust and adapt and evolve with these practices. And the ones that aren't are suffering. We're seeing some corporations fall and close. And I think that over time that will just prove to be more true, that if you're a corporation that is not taking it upon yourself to adjust your policies and adjust, your initiatives and really put some money behind them, put some resources behind them, then it's going to cause you to fail eventually.
Yeah, it's interesting because as I think about this topic, right, and women, again, being represented at the most senior levels within the organization and having that ability to communicate in ways that are authentic to who they are as individuals in support of the organization. And then this connection conversation of diversity, equity, inclusion strategy. And like, I still want to know why is it still a ceiling? I see it like you said, you talked about the ceiling, like on all these fronts, like why is there still a ceiling? It's October 6th, 2022. Like, why is this still a thing?
So, I mean, that's a great question. I mean, when you look at society, case in point, pop culture is huge for me. As far as looking at, I would say mostly like documentaries and things like that, like looking at what they choose to put out when, and how they choose to tell a story. And Netflix is great at telling a story about specific things and incidents that happen, criminal incidents. And we've been seeing a lot of true crime things that happen. And the reason why I bring this up is because we get to look at time, and we get to look at history and see how far away we are from changing this constant narrative. We're having this ceiling because nobody is doing enough to change it. We're having all of these things going on in our world and in the United States because nobody wants to change it. Like how having these conversations and these panels and things are great, and they're so important. But if no one at the top, none of the change makers are listening to it and taking heed to what's going on, then we are going to stay in the same place. And that's why we continue to see the same stuff happen over. I mean, and what's even more scary is that now we're not moving forward, we're moving backwards. So as women, we have to continuously scream and shout, hey, this is what my rights are. These are my rights. These are what I, am able to do. It doesn't matter. It feels like for me, especially, I can get a master's. I can get 15 degrees and I'm still going to be looked at the same way because we're still in the same place. So, I mean, we need to really challenge the people in authority and say, hey, when are you going to start making these changes? Because this is October. It's October 6th, 2022, and we are still looking at things that haven't been changed since the 90s, I mean, even the 60s. So we need to really hold them accountable. It's all about accountability, and we're making the changes. We're here today talking about it, but do we have the stakeholders that we really need to make the changes that we need to see immediately?
It's working for a few people who have the most power.
Mm-hmm.
That's why it's not changing. And the people, we are at this point where it's like, okay, well, if it's not, is it really working? That's the big question. If they're playing a short-term game, right? They're at retirement. They're just trying to make as much money as they can. They're not going to make cuts on their salary to, disseminate the wealth. Like, that's kind of a proven thing now. We can see that doesn't work for the majority of people who are actually putting in, the efforts and running the companies essentially. So yeah, it's the people who are being disenfranchised have to organize and speak up. And I call out to my Generation Xers. Like, we were the whatever generation. We were the whatever, right? And I know that the boomers complained about us, and then we had a whole new generation of people that boomers could complain about, and vice versa. And I didn't notice this generational gap. It just kind of seemed like this is the way things always has been. The generation before calls the generation after them lazy and entitled, and until they learn that this is a system they have to go. But with Generation X, we were the whatever too far. I think we were just like, okay, how do we succeed? Great. How do I get a house? That's even harder now. How do I get a house now? I have to play by these rules, and the need for security and the gap in how much harder it is now to have that security has forced generations that are younger in the workforce to play catch up and work harder. And it's become like a trapped system where we're just trying to keep our head above water. And so we're just trying to figure out how to do that. And it takes more to climb out of that and say, wow, I'm at my limit with what I can do in my work and in my life to keep it running. It seems exhausting and overwhelming, and to keep it up, it's like you have to keep up the momentum. And that's why C3 was created, because we're like, okay, we know it's hard. Let's do what we can to organize the people who want this change, to speak loudly to people who are in charge, who are Gen Xers now. Like, Gen Xers are coming into power. Like, Gen X, you don't have to accept this system that you were sold and bought. You're in charge now. Create the change that's necessary to make it better for generations that will come after us.
Yeah. And I think there, Karen, what you allude to, and thank you both for adding that in there. One of the biggest reasons I think the gap is, particularly why women in leadership we're still having this conversation in this era, is in the parallels of this conversation of diversity, is the difficulty of finding actual supportive networks. And this idea of performative allyship and advocacy across the spectrum. And again, I was with a group of leaders a couple weeks ago, and I'm like watching these leaders have this conversation about, well, we don't know how to help. I was like, you sorry Saka. I was like, you know how to do everything else, but all of a sudden you don't know how to support. And it's amazing to me that it's like all of a sudden you don't know how. But when it comes to making money, operationally, you know how. When it comes to doing, and it goes back to me, this little simple phrase: people pay attention, they give their attention and energy to what they want to.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a want to when it comes to supporting at a level within our networks. Asia, what do you have there?
I mean, you you came in when we were gung ho at my company about, having diversity, and you know midway it changed, and it's like, well, you know what, we kind of just want to have this group for everybody, and I'm like, that's not what it's created for. That's not what it's here for. So if that's, and then it's like it causes people who want to do the work to bow out and say, you know what, I'm done. And like you said, it's not about them not knowing how to do the work. They don't want to do the work because they don't see the benefit in it. But there's so much benefit in it. There's so much benefit in just saying, hey, we value what you do. And we're going to show you by having these trainings, implementing this, and, new hires, the new hire orientation. This is day one. You learn about diversity, having these workshops that are mandatory. But they don't want to do the work. And it's so unfortunate, and it's very frustrating because for people who do the work, or for people who are working there every day, it just devalues them. And it makes you feel like, why am I continuously coming here when you don't respect what I do? And then you see the correlations of other people, getting the treatment that you feel like you should be getting treatment, or the treatment is unequal. And then you just kind of have to be like, now how does that work? I feel like, Karen, when we're all saying here is that we have this network that we created, but then what I'm realizing, especially with the pandemic, that there's so many people after the pandemic, people are like, I'm going to create my own. So it's like, we have this supportive network, and now we have to just basically rise up and say, you know what, if they're not going to give it to them, we're going to give it to ourselves. And then we're going to source it out to everybody else. And that is the only way that we're going to be able to teach people and say, hey, you don't want to do it? Look, you don't have a choice because we're doing it for you. It's so easy. Just grab it, it frustrates me when you say that, oh, well, we don't know how to do it. No, just say you don't want to do it. Be transparent, because it really cheapens the fact that you even tried,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this reminds me of Michael Taylor, who has been a panelist and both for these events as well as for ConCon 2021. When he was talking about when they collected all the data, what they realized was that the reasons why major initiatives for change don't move forward is because people have discrepancies in how they perceive there even being a problem. And when you can educate the people who don't think there's a problem, like I think about the B Corp book was republished to include more DEI because more data supports that when you push forward DEI, there's trickle down benefits that just make the company flourish, make the community around the company flourish. It creates new revenue streams, it creates more wealth all around, mm-hmm. which enriches the company. And then I think about the fact, in the article I just submitted for the Delaware State Bar Association, I was talking to women about, if nobody's there to make your accomplishments visible, do it for each other. What would it look like if women were just more willing to be like, hey, did you notice what she did? Anybody? And utilize each other. And unfortunately, I still see there just being major competition, women buying into this, like, I have to, play into this work hard environment, to work harder than men to achieve the same result. And while also taking on more of the administrative burdens, the planning burdens, the post-meeting messaging burdens, event planning burdens. And I also think of Cy Wakeman, who comes up almost every time we do this, when she says work with the willing. Not everybody is willing to do this change, but you got to find a few people who are willing to work together. Again, that was really one of the premises of this community. It was like, we're going to just take the people who are willing right now to stand up and use their social equity, their work equity, their reputations that they've built, to speak out, use their authority, get people to listen. There is a silent majority of people who support change but won't step up to make it. Once you have those people who have gained this, this equity in their companies and can utilize it and leverage it to speak out, more of this silent majority will come out and speak as well.
Yeah.
Right. And can I just piggyback on that really quickly?
Yeah.
I mean, like the silent, like women helping women, like the project I just worked on, it's all women, and all of our stories are not, the same. But we can learn something and we can pull something from each other. This is not a competition because we're all not on equal footing. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if you're a white woman or a Black woman or, Asian, Hispanic woman. We are all women and we are all going through the same kind of, issues, because women are second class citizens, that's how we've been perceived. When in actuality, we do hold a lot of, we bear a lot of weight. We carry a lot of the, everything on our back. And it's like, that is always being dismissed. And I feel like what you're saying is that we do need to work together and we need to come together and say, hey, look, that person's doing it. How did they do that? Let me ask them. How can I get put on? Like, this is about building, we're all helping each other up over that ladder. We're pulling each other up and trying to build each other up as a community, as a people, to strengthen each other, because we all benefit from it. Like diversity, we all benefit from it. But that there continues to be that, oh, well, we don't need it because the bottom line is not being met. But you know what? Maybe if you did this and you implemented this, the bottom line would be met. So saying those things, like, and hearing what you're saying is so important that we realize that, what, we need to do a better job of supporting each other and complimenting each other and just having each other's back, because people will say, oh my gosh, this is something, that growing trend that feel like is beneficial for me because of XYZ. So I think, I thank you for saying that and just putting that out there because it's so important.
Yeah. And let's make the data. Make the data sing. So BS on that it don't make sense. No, these dollars make sense because when you talk about diversity in totality, ethnicity, gender, all diversity, period, impacts the bottom line. Double-digit percentages. There are McKinsey reports, there are Gallup reports, there are all Deloitte reports that say this just makes good business sense. In fact, and what y'all already hit on is the fact that people don't want to. And again, and I'll never forget, somebody has said it like this in the organization. I just asked, why won't y'all make the obvious change towards more productivity when it comes to diversity, like inclusion? They were like, because we're making money in spite of ourselves. I was like, but I couldn't be mad.
Right.
I was like, but you're a part of the problem. And in their mind, they were like, to me, and I'm finding it funny that these days, like, I'm really operationalizing, and now these phrases that we probably repeated all our life. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. That literally what came up, like when this person said that to me, and I'm like, and he was dead serious. Like that was that phrase in action. And now I believe that today, that is such a cop-out phrase. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. Well, again, that to me, that's why we're having all this infighting within organizations today. They're like, well, it's still working. Why change anything? Well, think now we have a generation of employee. And here's the other part about labeling our appreciated executives and everybody who are retiring now in the baby boomer generation who had this insatiable desire to label things. Baby boomers, Gen Xers, now Xennials or whatever you are, millennials are in their 40s. So let's stop talking about millennials as if they're like in their 20s still. So let's just want to throw that out there for anybody listening. But now our oldest kind of Gen Zers, they're like in their mid 20s. Like they're in their mid 20s now. So they are the workforce. And so for us, this just makes good business sense because A whole lot of the old is phasing out really, really fast. And if we don't get our arms wrapped around this, we're going to have about a decade of a workforce that's not ready to take over our organizations. That's why so many new businesses are popping up, because they're like, I could do bad all by myself.
Mm-hmm.
I would rather. And so for you all thinking about organizations, like how do organizations wrap their heads around being more organizationally sound structurally and from an effectiveness standpoint? How do they begin this process?
So I remember when I was getting my master's and we were talking about it, and I was just like, when you go in, you have to, it's all about evaluation. So, we look at the data, and we evaluate what's working. So our pros and cons. So we're evaluating, and for me and my workforce, I see that I'm basically a dinosaur, being in my 40s, and I'm cool with it. And I love to sit and watch my Gen Xers, try to figure things out. But I'm like, you know what? You're reinventing the wheel. This isn't going to work, and it's not going to work because of this. And it's just like it's there. It's in plain sight that we don't need to break a working system. We just need to make it better. I mean, I'm not gonna, if they give me a recipe and I have all of the, everything that I'm supposed to put in there, and I'm like, oh, it needs some salt, but I don't want to put any salt in it because I'm afraid of breaking it and making it. I'm going to put some salt on it. So basically we have to season it. We have to make it better. And that's what I'm feeling like. That's the formula for creating success in organizations, is realizing, yes, you do have a working system. It's great, but there's something that can make it just that much better. And then the other person, the other thing is to basically talk to these because they think they know it, like the younger generations. I mean, they always think they know it a little bit, everything. And so to let them know, hey, I'm not trying to, boss you around. I'm coming to you in a way where I can, be your peer and let you know, maybe you want to do this. Maybe you want to tweak this, I mean, what you're saying is great, but there's something that can, be tweaked. You may know a different system or some kind of different technology, but this is how I see it working for everybody. And this is a team approach. It's not, taking anything from you and your expertise, because we know you're smart and you got it and you know everything. But this is just a little seasoning for your meal to make it just that much better, So it's kind of like, you gotta kind of, manipulate the situation just a little bit to make them know that, I'm not this OG trying to, trump you and make you sound like you don't know what you're doing. I'm just here to, add a little seasoning on it, a little flavor, and provide the best result that, at the end of the day, the best result that we can get.
Yeah. I definitely, I'm grinning because I went from teaching at a business school at Drexel University, where it was all about teaching these students to play along with the corporate system that exists so that they can succeed and be hired by Fortune 500 companies, to teaching at Cabrini University, which has a social justice platform. And yeah, all my students, I went from teaching millennials and then to Gen Z, and the difference between them. And yeah, they just wanted to break all the systems. And I'm like, I'm here for a reason. I have, I realize that some of this isn't working. And I thought about their lived experiences. If they were, born around the time when, the 2008 recession hit, what they witnessed was that in spite of the fact that my parents were hardworking people and did everything that they were supposed to do, they suffered and we suffered. And I understand their want to just like break it apart and reinvent it. But when they don't have the wisdom of what works and what doesn't work, you can reinvent all you want, but you're going to spend a lot of time on trial and error and ultimately come to some of the same conclusions, if you can just be open to what has happened already. And then, and then there's the bridging the gap between we can't, if we're talking about inclusion, we have to include the boomer lived experiences as well. You know, like they know some things that we should be taking with us. We can't just say everything that you've experienced is invalid. This is a new world. It's a new way. Well, not yet. You know what I mean? Like, we can't just take away everything that they've built and without anything to replace it. So I think the focus needs to be on what is the system that works and how do we integrate it into what's already existing.
Yeah, I love that. And it brings to mind, and again, the other reason why I love coaching, right, is really to be able to facilitate those discussions, particularly group facilitation, when multiple generations are represented. And I appreciate a leader session that I did a couple weeks back, and we were just talking about how do we bridge this communication gap, right? And you talk about inclusion, you talk about women in leadership, you talk about, and there was representation generationally, gender, ethnic in the room, and they began to have this amazing dialogue, Karen, to what you were alluding to, and to see it like, and it really started with, hey, what are we bringing to the pot? And again, and where they landed was, can we honor that everybody brings value? Can we start there? And I really think as we have this conversation, the reason why we're sounding like broken records and we keep having the same types of conversations is because it's almost like there's competition of whose information is more valid than somebody else's. But Karen, what I heard from that you said is, hey, let's understand, guess what? Let's figure out what the validity is in today's current state. So that means call them in, don't call them out. Mm-hmm. Like, information is valid. Women in leadership, there needs to be representation because, again, being trained on how to negotiate, on strategic thinking, and all the rest of that. How could there ever be a woman who's ready if a woman never is given an opportunity? Same thing with diversity in the workplace. How can someone be ready if they never get the opportunity? And here's the other part that's generally left out. And here, and again, kind of something generationally is the active component of mentorship, mm-hmm. coaching, and all the rest of these things to support the bridging of gaps. And again, I really believe that, and in the secretive nature of sponsorship in the corporate environment, and that becoming a more explicit thing that people talk about, and not these old closed door conversations about 9-box conversations, who's being promoted and who's not, so we can get this revolving door of the same type of people getting promoted. These are the types of things to help bridge these gaps. But there needs, I believe, people like us and these coaches, that organizations like, hey, we need help. Mm-hmm. Like, really just saying, we don't know, but that's not sexy. It's not sexy to say, I don't know, but actually you don't know. So actually call in people that can help you facilitate this in meaningful ways so that it doesn't feel like a knee-jerk reaction, or you taking your biannual climate survey and you're having a knee-jerk reaction to number 52. Like, can we be a little bit more strategic than that? People who are asking others to be strategic. So thinking about it, just implementing strategy, like, how have you both kind of coached your organizations or coached people to take intentional steps towards advocating for women in leadership, diversity, equity, and inclusion?
I had to change my approach. I was gung-ho in my organization and really wanted to change the approach by creating education, bringing in speakers like yourself to help teach us what we don't know about our biases, and things like that. But when people leave who have the same passion as you, and you don't have that backbone and you don't have those people supporting you, it becomes a different agenda altogether. So I realized for myself, I can only operate on an individual level. and promoting it and being on, getting myself out there is self-promoting. Joining forces with CC3 and showing my approach and showing what I stand for is how I'm trying to, change and be strategically placed in a way that is not only for my organization, but it's for everybody to see. That diversity is so important. Having women in leadership is so important because it creates wonderful, unique ideas and ways to, approach a problem that you may not have thought of before because you didn't have that person, sitting at your table to brainstorm with you and have these think tanks, and so I'm really dealing with it now on an individual level and building it up so I can get myself out there more to kind of promote this work so I'm reinventing myself. And definitely doing it outside of the organization and doing it more so everybody can see in a social arena.
And we're here to support you, Asia. Whatever you need from the C3 community, please let us know. That's is exactly what we're here for, and I appreciate you being here. First of all, the clients that I attract, well, I want to piggyback on what both of you have said, because Lawrence, you were like, when we get everybody in the room, we have to all agree that everybody has a valid viewpoint, right? That everybody's experiences are valid. And then to really just recap what you both have said, it's also everybody agreeing that they have blind spots. Everybody has to agree that they don't know everything. I just want to really put an exclamation point on that, because when everybody in the room can agree that one, if this is a safe place, it's okay for you. There's that psychological safety. It's okay to not know everything. We're here for learning. We're here for growing. We're here to, you don't have to be a perfect leader in person and have done everything perfectly in the past. You just have to come with a willing spirit, to recognize your gaps and be open to new self-awarenesses that you might have made mistakes in the past. And that's okay, as long as, they weren't that damaging, and you're willing to change. The clients that I attract are already on the DEI train. They're change makers. What they want is how to exert more influence, how to leverage their brand, how to build their brand and leverage their brand to be a more visible, credible authority in their organization for pushing these things forward. And it's not just the how. The how is simple and yet difficult, right? It's really the how that's confounding them is, how do I add that to everything that's already on my plate? Which comes down to not just time management, but energy management, like eliminating the things out of their life that are sucking energy, setting boundaries, being able to communicate and enforce those boundaries. That's the hard work that leaders have to do in order to become, and not everybody's going to like it. You know what I mean? And you have to manage also the fact that you're using your reputation while also trying to balance not damaging your reputation and ruffling the wrong feathers at the same time. And that's where it's difficult. It's not hard. It's simple, but it's challenging.
Yeah. I think it reminds me of this process, and I love how, to all my veterans that are out there who don't know how you're going to transition, we transition very well. I'm going to let you know we transition very well. But this is the process that I'm thinking about when we going into any type of new operation or anything. There's this series of things we call crawl, walk, run. You got to crawl, walk, run. And I really believe when it comes to not understanding how to integrate women into the senior leadership or diversity into the workplace, it really is and I'm thinking about just the pandemic and the things that were exposed along with organizations not having infrastructure. But this idea that you could jump straight to run when it came to implementation of diversity, equity, and inclusion, and specifically all of a sudden advocacy And when you were all learning, you were learning how to spell the words for the first time. You were learning like to not have to Google what it means to be an advocate. And you were doing all that at the same time. And so it was like drinking from the fire hose. And like you said, Karen, and that default button is we got all this stuff on our plates. Well, that to me, when I hear organizations, I hear leaders say that, that means you don't understand why it's important. You actually don't even understand the value of it and how this is not just another thing that you do. This is actually who you are, and how being in support of diversity, equity, inclusion is a manifestation of your values in action. And it's moving from things being aspirational to actionable. And what organizations really found out about themselves is they literally were like, oh, that was on the aspiration train too. Like, and so now it's like, I'm exposed. And that's where all the little cute messages on websites started coming out and all these other things. They were like, see, go, this is where you can go find our message. But it was like, yeah, I see the word. Those, okay, so you took it off the walls, put it on your website, but we still don't know what it looks like. And so I think now organizations figuring out what this looks like for you in a phase of crawl, walk, run. Like find out. And again, I think that's the other part. These people, their egos are getting in the way. Cy Wakeman, their egos are getting in the way to now admit that they have to crawl at something. They built up all these years of being that person that just knows what to do, that now they're being relegated to have to be on their knees and crawl and actually ask for help when they don't even understand that that is one of the things. Being vulnerable, which again, bring in Brene Brown, she always makes an appearance. That vulnerability is also courageous to say we don't know what to do here, but we need you to walk alongside us and us operate in a non-judgmental space while we build our dexterity and we build the muscles to be in support of each other, right? So we can get to a walk, right? And again, some organizations like Karen that Karen's working with, organizations I'm working with, like they're getting stronger when you engage in the work. And so you got to put one foot in front of the other and pick your first next step. And so I mean, I really love this topic. I really hope that this is not the last time we do it, because we have so many amazing women leaders in the C3 community and coaches and other organizations. Man, let's beef this up. So Karen, what are you thinking as it pertains to the future of this conversation and the future of work when it comes to women leaders, diversity, equity, inclusion?
I would love to spend one event a month on this topic, and really break it down. Have multiple people who have successfully. I mean, I don't think anyone's on the other side of it really, but who have moved the needle to come on a monthly basis and share their anecdotes, their case studies. And I would love to create that opportunity for other speakers to come and build their own brand and credibility around DEI and have other organizations take notice of them and engage them and bring them in for their organizations to be that help. I would love that. And I would love to see C3 co-create that. But you're on mute still, Lawrence.
I was just saying I'm here for it. You know me. I'm here for it. Asia, so how can we support you? How can the community of work continue to support women in diversity in meaningful ways?
I think, mentorship, like you said, mentorship, someone that you can work with and who can kind of coach you and how to become more effective in this work. That is how I know I need support. Like I love the fact that you were worked in recruiting, Karen, and I feel that is so important, especially being a person who's always looking out for my family and my friends and trying to help them get jobs and recruiting and women and letting them know, hey, this is something I see. So that's something that I am passionate about becoming. I would love to be a recruiter, and that's not a career that I'm in right now. So, I think that just having that mentorship and knowing that we have someone that we can go to that can help us, get to that point is so important, when we're in I call it the baby journey, because, it is a new journey. And it is something that we're passionate about, but we don't always know how to get to that point, and it can be very lonely. So that's what I feel definitely would be the best thing for me and other people in my same space that I'm in right now.
Okay, well, you're not alone. I'm here. Let's connect offline. Let's connect post event, and I'm happy to help you transition to that journey.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Love it, love it, love it. Well, y'all, again, as you can see, this is the tip of the iceberg on this conversation. And as you can see, Karen and I are excited about just continuing this work in meaningful ways. And so if you are a speaker, and thank you so much, Asia, for being our speaker, our panelist for today.
Of course. Thank you for having me. This has been great.
Yeah, we actually love this. And so, Karen, how can they stay connected in with our community?
If you're not currently a member of the C3 community and you consider yourselves committed to co-creating a more conscious corporate landscape that includes pushing forward DEI initiatives, then the link to the C3 community is right there under my picture there, the C3 community. You can also just go to LinkedIn and type in C3 Corporate Consciousness Co-op and request leadership. Request to join that group. And then once you're in that group, introduce yourself. Tell us what it is that you can teach the community that will help us all move the needle. We put up polls every month on topics that our community wants to cover. So this topic, women in leadership, was the winner. Was tied, actually, technically, with something else. And we just decided to combine it with DEI, which we've been hoping would win the poll every month, and it hasn't. So we're just gonna do that. And co-create an event. We have a blueprint, a platform, and a community ready to and hungry to hear how it's been for you to have success in the conscious areas of leadership. So come join our platform. Come share the stage, share a spotlight, share your expertise, share your success secrets.
All right, everybody. So I think that was a good conversation today. Yeah. Let's keep it going.
Yes. Thank you, Asia. We'll talk soon.
Thank you. Yes, looking forward to talking. Good to see you again, Lawrence.
All right,
Keep up the good work.
Thank you.